The First Lady of Ukraine is calling on Congress to provide additional support to her war-torn country.
Olena Zelenska spoke to lawmakers on Capitol Hill this morning. Her remarks come as the Russian offensive continues in Ukraine. Zelenska's address is part of a high-profile trip to Washington to bring further attention to the crisis. During her remarks, she praised the U.S.'s ongoing efforts to help. She also shared the personal stories of some of the Ukrainians who have been killed and displaced since the war broke out. Ukraine's First Lady gave an impassioned plea for additional support.
I am asking for weapons that would not be used to wage a war on somebody else's land, but to protect one's home and the right to wake up alive in that home. I'm asking for air defense systems in order for rockets not to kill children in their strollers, in order for rockets not to destroy children's rooms and kill entire families.
CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion joins us now for more on this. Hi, Nikole. Good to see you. So we have heard similar pleas for additional air support from Ukrainian President Zelensky. What is different about what we heard from his wife, Ukraine's First Lady, today?
Well, I'm not sure that it was dramatically different. It was just a continued plea for aid. What was somewhat different in these remarks is that the First Lady really tried to tug at the heartstrings, as her husband has done, but to a certain extent just trying to relate to these members of Congress, not in an official capacity, but simply as a parent with children. And so she spent a lot of time within her remarks talking about the toll that this war has taken, in particular on women and children. For instance, she gave the story of this 3-year-old Ukrainian boy who is now in Germany recovering after a missile struck near his home that ultimately resulted in him now needing a prosthetic. So these were the kinds of stories that, the First Lady shared with members of Congress. Similarly, her husband, when he's addressed Congress before, has also shown very powerful images and video of the destruction and damage that has occurred in Ukraine, as his wife did today, just trying to reinforce again the toll and the scale of not only physical damage, but just also the human toll that this is taking on the country at this time.
Given that and the fact that she's trying to really reach these lawmakers, what's the reaction that you've been seeing on Capitol Hill to her remarks?
Well, look, I talked to some members of Congress today. A number of them also reacted after the speech, and by and large, many lawmakers feel that her comments today were extremely powerful and impactful. And in terms of the members I spoke with, they do feel that Congress should be doing more. We again heard the First Lady reiterate that need for more weaponry, more air defense systems. And so, for instance, one Republican senator I talked to said that, they supported additional action, but talked more about from the standpoint of resolutions, for instance, whether that is making Russia a state sponsor of terrorism, a resolution, for instance, dealing with war crimes. This lawmaker suggested that war crimes had been committed. So these are things that have kind of been in the works here on the Hill. But in terms of that specific ask, some members do feel that there should be another aid package, and one that can sustain Ukraine into next year, because obviously we have seen this has been an extremely long and difficult fight for the Ukrainians. So the concern, though, of course, right now is simply timing. And we heard the First Lady address that in her speech, saying, look, I know you're getting ready to go on this August recess, and you probably have your schedules set into the fall. And she made the comparison that she does not have that luxury. She doesn't know if her, children will be able to go to school next fall. And so therefore, she said, because of that uncertainty, she really was hopeful and pushing Congress to act with speed and haste. We know Congress has already approved an aid package to Ukraine, some $40 billion. That was just a couple of months ago. That was designed to kind of take them through the latter part of this year. But again, as we heard the First Lady reiterate, more support is needed by the country. And again, many members of Congress feel that they can and should step up. But again, it's more a matter of when.
And of course, it's a strong message to send, having her speaking to Congress. But I'm curious what the message is that she's sending back home, because Zelenska has recently emerged as a strong proponent for mental health and support for all of those impacted by the Russian invasion. So what sort of message is it sending to Ukrainians who are very much in need of hope?
Well, look, keep in mind that parts of the First Lady's visit have been quite high profile in terms of meeting with the First Lady while she was here, addressing Congress. Other parts have been more low key, since she's not necessarily traveling in an official capacity as a representative of her husband. And so, for instance, with Secretary Blinken earlier this week, we didn't necessarily see a photo op between those two. But again, I think part of this is really trying to keep the Ukrainian story before the American public, as well as before American lawmakers, who again have the will and the wherewithal to be able to provide additional assistance, which again is what the First Lady is calling for. And I think, her hope and the hope certainly of many is that, folks who see this back home will again know that, the world is still paying attention to their story.
All right.
Nikole Killion. All right. Thank you very much, Nikole.